Hi and welcome to our Olympic preview series. I'm Sarah and I'm so happy to be joined by former ice dancer and current ISU commentator Mark Hanretty.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Awesome, second time lucky. So how did you first get involved in skating and what drew you to ice dance?
Oh my goodness. Well, I started skating having watched Torv Lundin return to compete in the 1994 Olympics. So they obviously won in 84 and then they returned 10 years later and it made like big news in the UK. And I was 9 years old. And I remember watching, it's comedy now when I think about it. I remember watching them at European Championships in Copenhagen on TV and then obviously at the Olympic Games. And 9-year-old Mark Hanretty, who had never ice skated before, was like our nation in the UK, obsessed with all things Torv Lundin. And I remember at the time being swept up in a frenzy of UK frustration at them not winning. And 9-year-old Mark was like, oh, Russian ice dancers, like they're just rubbish. They're just terrible. And now I spent the rest of my career trying to be like them. So that was me. That was my initiation into ice skating. But then I was a single skater first because where I skated in Scotland, they didn't teach ice dance. And I competed up to like junior level as a single skater. And then I got an injury. And I remember watching Plushenko compete in Worlds. I think it was in Minneapolis. So would that be 90? I don't know. I remember watching Plushenko, and I think he wasn't that much older than me. He was doing quadruple combination, and I couldn't land triple axel at the time. And that was like a sign, maybe it's time to segue and try something else. So then I switched to ice dance at the ripe old age of like 19, and then tried as hard as I could to be an elite ice dancer, but kind of started a little bit too late. But yeah, I had fun.
So now in the skating world, you're a coach, you're a choreographer, and you're very often heard doing commentary for ISU streams. How do you balance it all?
Oh my goodness. It's hard, especially with two young children. But yeah, I mean, I'm really lucky that what was my hobby and my passion when I was younger became a job. And I'm just really fortunate that something that I'm so intensely passionate about gives me opportunities to pay for my family to live, you know? So yeah, really, really lucky. And I love doing the commentary. I remember when my first ISU championship competition, I remember the commentator making some pretty bold things, some things that I thought were really factually incorrect about me. And it really, really upset me at the time. So I think that's why perhaps since that time, I've had this yearning desire to commentate, to hopefully try and represent the skaters well and do the skaters justice, because I have an insight into the level of life obsession and devotion it takes to compete at an IC championship level. So that's something that I hope that I try and do. But it's easier said than done. It's not the easiest job in the world.
And what's it like to commentate on some skaters that you competed against, like back in 2010, Evan Bates, Alison Reed?
I think well, it's nice to have still like a little bit of a link to skaters that I competed against, and hopefully what I should try and do if I'm continued to be asked to commentate, what I should try and do is remember the respect that I have for them, because obviously the likes of Alison that you've mentioned, the skaters that I did compete alongside with or trained alongside with, I have heart for them. My heart is there for them because I resonate with what they go through and have gone through. I probably have even greater respect for them because they continue to push themselves through that training process for a decade longer. That's something that I hope that I can keep if I'm asked to commentate, say, in another 10 years when there will be absolutely nobody that will, still be competing that I competed alongside. Because I think that level of empathy for the skaters is really, really important. And I know that, especially if I do commentary for the ISUs, I used to commentate for Eurosport a bit, but now doing the ISU stuff that I've done more recently, obviously that's something that skaters around the world will listen into, not because they're listening for my commentary, of course, but because they're watching their competitors. And so, or they're watching back to review their own performances. And so every now and then I'm just really acutely aware that I am there to give critique and comment on the stuff that they have spent months and years working towards, and I just come in, for the event and give my opinion. And I just think, it would be easy to be flippant And yeah, it's so important that you really give the respect to the craft for the skaters.
And looking into the ice dance from this past quad, what's been some of the highlights for you? Any specific teams or any programs that stand out?
In this last Olympic cycle, in all the disciplines has been fascinating. For me, with the ice dance over this last Olympic cycle, what I think is really fascinating is just seeing so many teams continue. And like Hubble and Donahue is an example. Like Zachary, I trained with him briefly like a million years ago. And it's just the reality that so many of these teams are still putting themselves out. They're still doing, that cripplingly exhausting work to compete at the highest level year on year. And it fascinates me to see that so many teams are still pushing themselves to be in the mix. Equally, it also saddens me a little bit that there aren't maybe the professional skating opportunities that some might have exploited in the past. I think if the professional skating world was a little bit more buoyant, as it has been maybe in the 90s and early 90s, then some of the skaters might have had more opportunities potentially to segue into the pro world. I wonder whether or not a lot of these amateur teams are continuing because there aren't other opportunities that there may have been in the past. So that fascinates me. But what it has done is make the level of quality within ice dance just off the scale phenomenal. And what I see now looking into Beijing is so many teams that really deserve an Olympic medal. There are so many teams who, to me, deserve an Olympic medal that need to go on in the rest of their lifetime being able to say they're an Olympic medalist. And it really saddens me to think that there are only 3 spots on that rostrum in Beijing, and there are more teams than that deserve the medal. And yeah, I am glad that I am not a judge. That's one thing I will not be doing. For sure. Coach, choreographer, skater, performer, commentator. Absolutely no way, Jose, will I be a judge.
So sort of looking, because you obviously watch all the other disciplines as well, have there been any really big standouts for you for obviously in this past Olympic cycle with any other disciplines?
I think we have to really acknowledge that it's the women's discipline that has just revolutionized, really. I mean, the women's discipline is just quantum leap from what it was when Zagitova won, because with Zagitova winning gold, Medvedeva second, it was Caitlin Osmond that was third, and none of them had triple axe or a quad, and yet I do not believe it would be possible to get an Olympic medal just 4 years later, 4 short years later. That's not a long time, really. I don't think it's possible in the women's discipline to get an Olympic medal without either a triple axe or a quad. I could be wrong, but bets are on that that's a necessity, and that's mind-boggling, really, the speed to which the women's field has just improved. I don't know, some argue that maybe those technical advancements aren't an improvement because what you bring technically, you maybe suffer a little bit on other aspects, but certainly pushing boundaries, that's for sure.
Yeah. And as we look towards the Olympics, which start next week, the week after, the time is very weird at the moment. The team event is obviously the first thing that comes up. So before I get into like overall predictions and stuff, some more pointed questions of, first of all, do you think Japan would have had a sure chance of a medal if they'd have sent Kana Muramoto and Daisuke Takahashi to the Olympics instead of Masato Komatsubara and Tim Coletto?
I don't think so. I don't think that the difference in those teams in terms of scores was monumentous enough or large enough to make that have a bigger impact. In the team event, I think both teams are really strong. It was a fascinating battle, much like the Spanish. I mean, the Spanish ice dance battle this year was one of the I think the highlights for skating fans around the world. It just became so exciting to see what would happen. And that was a little bit the same, obviously, in Japanese ice dance, particularly because Daisuke Takahashi we know and love and have loved for so many years. But I don't think Kana and Tim going will adversely affect Japan's chances of the bronze medal that they may accrue. I do wonder, you might know better than me because you've been in the loop a little bit more than I have recently, as to whether or not getting Olympic selection causes Daisuke to retire again, or whether or not now he would again pursue another Olympic cycle. That's something that I would love to know. I don't suppose you've heard of the grapevine.
I think they've said more recently that they're looking towards continuing on past this season, which I'm very excited for. I think their programs this season were amazing.
Absolutely. And so I think, I'm 36, I think he's 35. Yeah. Oh, quick Google check. See, that's the thing. Like I said to you, because I've been doing dancing on ice, I've kind of checked out of doing all my research. Normally when I commentate, I research endlessly. But because I'm not able to do any of the rest of the events this season, I've kind of checked out. So yeah, I should be more. I apologize.
35 exactly.
Oh, I was right. So he's 35, which would be fascinating then if he was to go on and be competing at 39 in the games. I'm sure that would be a record. I think Jane and Chris were 36 and they competed in the 94 Olympics. But I wonder how long it's been since we had somebody at Olympic level figure skating 39. That'd be interesting.
It definitely would. Do you think the Japanese Federation made the right choice with who they picked for ice dance?
It's a really good question. And again, Tim Kalito is somebody that I trained with. I think he was still single skating in the world arena when I was training there as an ice dancer. So I am reluctant to say anything. And the thing is, when you think about, say, Tim, who has been a single skater successfully as an American single skater, and then he's represented different ice dance nations, he's married to his ice dance partner, the commitment to becoming an Olympian, monumentous, off the scale. You know, that's just, a life's devotion to achieving this goal. And so I couldn't say then that they aren't deserving, because both Kana and Daisuke have been, Daisuke definitely been Olympian. Kana's been an Olympian with Chris.
Yep.
I think so. They've both been Olympians. Tim hasn't had the chance, so I mean, this is where I can get too overly sentimental. This is where I don't know if it's a good or bad thing with my commentary, because maybe knowing the athletes, then I can just be too overwrought with emotion for them. It's like even looking at the pairs event coming up to Beijing, as I thought, we're bound to talk about it. For me, knowing Sui and Han were so devastated at Olympic silver 4 years ago, I can't comprehend watching it. I don't have the emotional strength to be able to watch it, knowing that they might not win this time. So yes, in regards to the Japanese ice dance, I'm delighted that Tim is getting to go. Both teams were worthy. I just hope that we might be able to see them continue that battle, much as we have Spanish ice dancers over the last quad. And
Kana and Daisuke are heading to World, so that's a great opportunity to hopefully get 2 spots for ice dance for the following seasons and hopefully keep that going.
Well, and that's what's going to be, I think, particularly interesting in ice dance moving forward past this games. I'm really intrigued to see who will continue, and it's interesting. And again, ear to the ground, who knows what. But I'm not sure who is going to make the retirement. Hubble and Donahue are the ones that have been most vocal about it. Like, they are like, bish, bash, bosh, game over after this season. I know Guinar and Fabry, I was surprised because, they're one of the older teams, but delighted to hear that they're not going to retire. It'll be interesting to see what happens after the Worlds in France as to who will retire, because we could see a big change of the guard.
Yeah, I think it is ice dance coming into next season and next quad for sure is going to be very entertaining, because I think for the past 4 years, it's been pretty set in stone for the most part who's like at the top or who's in that top 10.
Well, I was thinking, that's the thing, like Papadakis is around, Sinitsina Katsapov, that's pretty much, well, I don't know. You assume first and second. Obviously, it's been interesting recently because after that European Championships when the Russians stole the title from Gabi and Guillaume, and then Gabi and Guillaume didn't do Worlds, and Sinitsina gets up above one Worlds. You kind of felt like this energy shift towards the Russians. But I sense, could be wrong, that the tidal wave is swept back to Papadakis and Cizeron for the gold. I did think that the Russians would be a shoo-in for silver, but it was interesting that Europeans, they were only 4.5 points ahead of Stepanova and Buchan. And that was surprising. And then that made me think, oh, maybe, just maybe, then Hubble and Donahue, Chalk and Bates, Gillis Party could be, it would be really lovely if the medals in the ice dance category were awarded to the people that most deserve them. I think they all deserve a medal. But I just hope that over the 2 days, the feelings in the arena, by the fans around the world, by the coaches, officials, and judges are all as unanimous as is ever possible in the world of crazy ice dance.
Yeah. I think the sort of rise of Stepanova and Buchan's scores, especially compared to the Grand Prix and sort of the, I guess, disappointing scores and maybe slightly disappointing programs as well they put out, it was very interesting. And then that sort of swayed talk towards the team event. And then if Russia split ice dance, will the scores be like on that same level if they do decide to split ice dance? Because obviously Nikita Kosalapov's had a back injury, and then at their second Grand Prix that obviously affected their free dance a bit. What are your opinions? Do you think they should split ice dance maybe in that team event?
Well, gosh, it's interesting actually, because I listened to your interview with Megan on the pairs, and she was referencing the team event for Pyeongchang and how Caitlin and Andrew didn't get assigned the team event because Canada obviously was so desperately eager to get that gold medal, and Tessa and Scott were definitely the safest bet. But then, because Caitlin and Andrew are trained with a little bit, so hearing that and having that reiterated to me that Caitlin and Andrew would have been able to say they were Olympic gold medalists and couldn't, makes me really sad. So for the team event with two strong teams, with Russia being such a shoo-in for gold, and maybe splitting the teams, and then that's when I got all sentimental again. I just want everybody to get all the medals. I'm like, yeah, split it, get everybody all the medals, get as many people as you got to get the medals. So yeah, split them, give everybody a shot.
So again, although it's an ice dance preview, I want to talk a bit about the other disciplines. And sort of overall, who do you think are the strongest three countries for that team event podium?
It's Russia, America, Japan. I think this pretty safe bet. To be honest, I still this is a bit shameless, but I still haven't got my head wrapped around the team event as much, because we only see it in Olympic Games. What will this be, the third Olympic cycle with the team event, or the fourth? Just the third one. It's great to see more skating at the games. It's great to have an opportunity to celebrate skating. And interestingly, actually, I was chatting to the lady that I'm skating with on Dancing on Ice, who's a Pussycat doll, and she's a dance expert and a lover of all things dance. And she said, your craft is so much more historically annotated and recorded because of those games. There's obviously so many incredible dancers in the world, but our sport has that punctuation point with the Olympic Games. But in my head, we have the Olympics, but I haven't quite got my head around the importance and the value of the team event, because I don't know, I just resonate with skating as individuals. And yeah, Russia will win, I think, but that doesn't excite me the way that, a person will in a singles event. Maybe that's something that I need to get my head around if I ever get to commentate the games. Maybe I'll have to really hone in and making it sound more exciting if I get the good fortune of commentating on that in 4 years' time.
I know you're definitely a fan favorite commentator, I'll tell you that. So people would love to hear you at the Olympics.
I actually feel really guilty because I'm getting these tweets saying, "Are you doing the games? Are you doing the games?" And I'm like, "No, sorry." I mean, I would love to be doing it. And actually, I would love to be on site. I just think that'd be amazing. It's still hurts my soul to know that I didn't get a chance to compete at the Olympic Games, but I would love to be there to commentate, but just too busy with dancing on ice at the moment.
Yeah. Well, 2026, let's hope. So who are sort of the teams you think might be that 4th and 5th place at the team events? Obviously only 5 go through to the free skates and free dance.
Yeah, well, it was interesting again listening to Megan's opinions, and I think she had Georgia down as a likely candidate, which I thought was fascinating. It's also intriguing to see Canada's 4 years change, and now they're just not in anywhere near the same position for medal contention that they maybe once were. But I think they're definitely still in the mix for just off the podium spots.
Awesome. And then moving into the individual event, you mentioned sort of not your bias, but your bias towards some skaters. It's fine. We all have biases. It's fine. But that 3rd place feels like a tight race between Chalk and Bates, Hobland Donahue, and Gillis and Poirier. If you had to pick, who do you think is gonna end up on 3rd?
Okay, so I knew I was going to be put on the spot. Okay, and obviously when I commentate so far, I seem to have managed to avoid too much accusations of bias, although there are some accusations. But with the dance event, I saw something recently, I think just yesterday. It was a tweet, and Evgenia Medvedeva was quoted an article, and I saw a link. And she said that she remembers pre-Pyeongchang seeing online predictions, and she found it awful to know that people, I presume at that point, people were thinking that Zagitova was going to take the title, and she was seeing all this stuff. And so for me, there is a reluctance to give a definitive 3rd, 4th, 5th, because those athletes at this time don't need to hear anything other than glorious positivity sent their way, which brings me to a point which I might use you as a platform to speak up. A little bit controversial now, because I'm really aware, particularly having done some commentary recently, of all that goes on online, and it's wonderful to see so much passion for skating and so much eagerness to discuss it, and there was obviously a huge fan love and fan base for different facets and different athletes. What I find so tragically sad is when people will slam a skater, a young athlete who is going through all the challenges of being a teenager, as many of these young women are, who seem to be the ones that are the most scrutinized, pushing their body and their mind and their very being to the limits to try and be elite competitively successful. And there are some keyboard warriors trashing them and their coaches. Oh, blows my mind. And I try to be I try hard not to comment online, because I feel like now, because I am a commentator, and sometimes if I'm the voice of the ISU for some of the events, I feel like I can't show any feeling towards it. But see, when there are some keyboard warriors, and they're trashing a young girl, and I know that young girl might see it, or young boy, or anybody, really gets on my mic. So I've gone way off topic as to who's going to get bronze. I think bronze could be any one of those 3 teams. I remember last year watching Piper and Paul in the free dance at Worlds. I was commentating in that event, and I was literally like having to catch myself from crying. I remember being on the mic and be like, "Get a grip of yourself, Mark. You've got to talk." They finished, and there was like a bit of a 10-second pause when they were doing their bow, and I was like, "Come on." So that, to me, if there's a performance that moves me that way, then that'll be the one that I'm going to go for. And I think Piper and Paul have that kind of same emotive vibe this year, but Hubland Donahue have that. Chalk and Bates, though, I love that free dance. I think it's so clever and so brave to go with something unique. Like Olympic year is the time you bring out Malaguena and Carmen and you just go safe and steady, and they're going for Daft Punk alien stuff. what? So I love that too. And I think shout out to Madison Chalk's dress and styling. That girl is on point. She is impeccably presented. So sorry, can't call it.
Okay, a slight twist on that then. Who else would you like to see sort of in that almost like catchment point of potentially a medal, if like you could see anyone in?
Interesting question. One of the couples that I have a huge amount of respect for is Guinard and Fabry, because, and this is maybe where I'm going to be too open and too honest, because they are not quintessential ice dance team pairing. You know, like we look at Victoria and Nikita, who are long-limbed, perfect height proportions, you know, this like primed from picked from nursery school. You can almost imagine, like, I know that they had different partners previously, but they just fit that mold of quintessential Russian ice dancer, you know, like Kamova, Ponomarenko, like the perfect proportions. Guinard and Fabry are not that. And yet, and interesting, when I was researching and prepping for them in one of the last events that I did, I was learning about how they done at junior Grand Prix events, I think with previous partners, because she's French. I think she did junior Grand Prix for France.
Yeah.
And they didn't do that great. They didn't do that brilliantly. And I love to see that then somebody's had the tenacity to just plow and plow and plow through and now show world-class status. And I actually think that in terms of technique and like so that straight line lift, I think it is that they do in the rhythm dance, their technique is really good, solid quality. And they have originality, and some of the transitions, he goes, in my head, I can pick out some of their transitions in my head, which is not something I can say for many teams. And I have a huge amount of respect for that team. Like, they defy all odds to be as good as they are. And I think they deserve all the success, because I think their level of work is blatantly obvious in the work that they produce.
Amazing. I think they've definitely become fan favorites, this quad especially, because of their like technique and sort of everything right down to the last detail, and just knowing sort of that they were the second team behind Anna and Luca, and now they've managed to push through into that first team and almost at the top as well.
And I think also a shout out to the fact that, like, Barbara Fusapoli, like everybody will always reference that game when she gave that stare, but they seem to have made a real great team. And, you know, as it is in singles and in pairs, but dance, you know, we tend to have, you know, Alexander Julin's always at the side. It used to be Natalia Linichuk. She's moved on, but like we have our, you know, top group coaches, Igor Spielband, Marina Zaweva for the previous Olympic cycle. We have our top, you know, those coaches that you just see repeatedly, that couples will move to, sometimes for a political sway, sometimes for the training environment. Barbara and Charlene and Marco have created, removed from everybody else, you know, and I really like the sense of team that has really blossomed. It's exciting.
Yeah. And across the other disciplines as well, do you think there are any skaters that will be a surprise on the podium?
I think the pairs is the podium, the arrangement on the podium, maybe a little bit maneuverable, but the pair seems fairly tied up between Sweden Han and the three Russian teams, and the top four, I suspect, is some order within that. The women's event, Sambo 70, I think. You know, I think if I was a betting man, which I'm not, you have to assume that then it will be a Sambo 70 1, 2, 3. Unless Kaori Sakamoto can sneak through with a clean skate, maybe. But I have to assume that probably the men is the one that, I don't know, could be the most up for debate. But then if you look at the men competing, it's a bit like the ice dance with, you know, people staying in. Nathan Chen, multiple-time world champion, Han Yu, god of men's skating, 2 Olympic golds already. Shoma, Olympic silver medalist, reigning Olympic silver medalist. Yuma Kageyama, reigning world silver medalist. Vincent's got former world bronze medals. Medal.
Medal.
But former, world medalist. So what's that? Have I got six? There's a lot of guys in there who, again, it's a bit like I said about the ice dance. It's sad to realize that there's only 3 medals on offer, and you've got all these great skaters. But I think for me, coming into Beijing, it's going to be fascinating to see if Yuzuru can contend again. I didn't think it'd be possible because Nathan had that undefeated streak up to Skate America since Pyeongchang. And then obviously Yuzuru's injury ruled him out of the Grand Prix. So coming into the beginning of the season, I was like, yeah, Nathan, it's like the trajectory. But then, what was it Yuzuru scored? Like something like 3.22 Japanese nationals, going for quad axel. It's a really fascinating story, and it's like you go back to Gillis Grafström from Sweden 100 years ago since a man won 3 Olympic gold medals. You know what I mean? Like, or Dick Button at 48 and 52 Olympics, 70 years ago? And now the sport is a million light years away since what Dick Button had to do to win his Olympic gold medals. And yet Yuzuru has kept himself in that shape for 3 Olympic cycles. Amazing. And I didn't think it was necessarily possible, but now I just think this man's like an enigma even. He convincingly beat Shoma Uno at Japanese nationals. He's crazy enough to be going for quad axel. I would not be surprised if he does it. But then you've got another man, another crazy, focused, amazing athlete in Nathan Chen as well. So it's a bit like the Battle of the Bryans, it's like an Olympic men's duel of all duels.
If you had to pick a name out as a complete underdog for maybe not the podium, but that top 5 finish, who do you think that would be?
In men's?
In all the disciplines.
Top 5 teams, skaters that have caught my attention and excited me. Obviously, Hendricks from Belgium.
Yep.
Off the podium at Europeans. There's been so much excitement, appreciation, and respect for her in the women's discipline because she's an athlete who's a master of technical expertise at a relatively older age. She's somebody that's breaking through at a relatively older age. I mean, she's spring chicken really, but in comparison to the way the women's field is shaping up now, where it's 15 and in and 16 and out, that's an exciting prospect. So excited to see how she will fare. And then in the other discipline, I love the Japanese pair team. They're just so cute. They're just infectiously joyful, and yeah, I'd like to see Miura and Kihara contend for top 5.
Awesome. And I've got to ask, did you watch Russian nationals or keep up to date about their ice dance decisions and everything recently?
So, like I say, because I knew that I wouldn't be able to commentate on anything at the latter half of the season because of my other commitments to work. I've not been as hot and stuff. But I did see all the controversy over the Russian ice dance. Personally sad for Tiffany and Jonathan. Tiffany, I gave her a couple of lessons, believe it or not, in Sheffield a million years ago when she was teeny. You would never imagine that Tiffany, who's so long limbed now, was a teeny tiny person. I remember teaching her on a Saturday morning once or twice. And it just really is sad to think that because of the illness that she's had and maybe the politics or whatever, she's not getting to go to the games. And that throws up all sorts of questions then about what will she do for the rest of her career, having had a great career so far. For so many of these athletes, the Olympics ends, the Olympics is the end point for so many. So if you haven't made it, what do you do? If you haven't got the medal, what do you do? So I wonder what Tiffany and Jonathan will do moving forwards. In terms of Teddy's daughter, making Olympic Games, again, referencing all the public scrutiny online of Teddy and Samuel Sevity and her daughter by association, I find it's quite fascinating, really. Like, let's face it, it's fascinating the way it all works out. And you know what? I don't really want to get into that mix of talking about Teddy because there's so much controversy over it and people seem to have such opinionated ideas. But like or loathe, the commitment to the craft and the commitment to trying to get the results seems intense. You know, these people they know what they want and they're out there to get it. And I see so much debate online about jump technique, age, all sorts of factors that I hear arguing against the product of these athletes. I don't want to entertain that, but if it's point scoring and getting Olympic qualifications, getting on the teams is what you're employed to do as a coach, they're doing it. You know, whether you like it or not, like, you know, they're doing it. And so if Teddy has had any play in helping her daughter to be the success that she is, then she's doing what any mother would do. So yeah, and actually interesting though, I did watch Davis and Smolkin at Europeans, and I didn't watch them at Russian Nationals, but I did watch them at Europeans, and I thought their speed and ice coverage was pretty epic. And I know that that's going to bolster those skating skills massively. So yeah, interesting. Who knows? They could be 2026 Olympic champions.
Wow, brave to put out there.
Bold prediction.
Bold. So on to some other general sort of questions. How do you see the future of ice dance and skating really developing in the UK? Does the lack of funding make it harder for prospects to develop and reach a high competitive standard?
Interesting point. So, I mean, one of the reasons that I felt somewhat obligated to retire and not continue to compete was because of the expense of the sport. And there is an element of feeling the need to train in one of the world-class training centres like the Ice Academy in Montreal. You know, when you think about the entrants going to Olympic Games, almost half of them come from the same venue. But obviously that comes at big financial implications upon the athlete, and that's just not possible for all. So for some other developing skating nations or less successful skating nations, to get the athletes to be competitive against such an elite hub where all the athletes are pushing each other's boundaries and expectations is really challenging. And within the UK, I can only hope that moving forward we can help to create that. And Christopher Dean and I and Jane Torval, we're working with the British Ice Skating Association at looking at ways in which we can help to foster and create more competitive success for young athletes. And certainly I would love to help an athlete not go through what I went through, whereby you felt like I just can't go. I went to European Championships and World Championships, and for me to have gone on and pushed myself to get, like I said to you, I competed and trained with Zachary Donoghue, or like I trained with Piper Gillis when she was competing before. For me to train for that next decade or so to ideally be competitive with them and be vying for Olympic medals just costs more than I could comprehend. And I don't want any other British athlete to have money be the reason that they can't continue in the sport. So I'd love to see if we can try and create something for other British athletes to offer them opportunities.
Can you talk a bit about what you're doing with Torval and Dean and British ice skating?
So basically Chris and I, we're obviously both intrinsically involved with Dancing on Ice, which is the most amazing fun show ever to be a part of, and I adore being a part of it. But we're conscious that not everything lasts forever, And as our bodies fail us for performing, then we want to be able to still pass on our wisdom and knowledge. And so we are looking at, ideally, timeline unclear exactly, but trying to emulate some of the stuff that happens in Montreal and trying to create a hub for ideally world-class homegrown ice dancers. The timeline is unclear. Our commitments are varied at the moment, but moving forward, if the stars align, that's definitely something we would love to emulate.
That sounds really awesome, and hopefully it brings more attention to skating here. And
definitely, and it's success breeds success. That's the problem. So obviously with Britain, I mean, Lila Fear and Lewis Gibson are doing amazingly well, but obviously they train in Montreal. But with there not being a plethora of talent within the UK, that's visible to younger athletes, they're not exposed to what's required, and so then it requires a huge amount of determination, focus, and imagination and inspiration from the coach to try and elevate a youngster to that level of quality.
And currently it's unknown what the rhythm dance patterns will be next season, or even the structure of it at the moment. But would you like to go back to something more traditional like the Golden Waltz, or a continuation of the more modern rhythms that we've been seeing?
Good question, girl. You got the good questions. I think, we have to evolve. Like, I think I love the rhythm dance this year. Loved it. I've loved the last couple of years, and I think that she's doing good stuff and trying to create, trying to help ice dance be as popular as possible to as many people as possible. So yeah, I love the way it's going. I mean, the Golden Waltz was an absolute, that's the hardest one going. So no, I don't want anybody to be inflicted upon it. Any waltzes to be inflicted upon the poor dancers. The Golden Waltz is just, 2 sequences of that would kill you.
So to wrap up, I'll go to some questions from our Patreon's Discord. So from Laura, how does it feel to be a fan favorite commentator?
Oh my goodness, that is so humbling. It's so nice. And what's really comical is that, like, I've spent my whole life trying to be as good a skater as I could possibly be, and now though it's my voice that seems to get the most adulation. So I'm like, okay, I'll take it. But yeah, like I said at the beginning, my like heartfelt passion is to try to represent the skaters as best as I can, because I recognize what they've gone through to get to that level. So if I can represent skaters, actually it's gloriously humbling and adorable to hear that people like to hear me, like the fans like it. I also sincerely hope that the skaters do. So.
From Lisa, how do you prepare for your commentary?
I spend hours trying to research each of the athletes. And again, like I said earlier, it's because a commentator commented on me factually incorrectly and said stuff that was really not cool. And you can tell from my voice that it's still like cuts a knife on my heart. So with that in mind, I try to research as much as I can and check in on things like your Twitter page and all the other Twitter pages with all the stats that I can possibly get. I am furiously going from Google to Wikipedia to Twitter skating stuff, and yeah, trying to write.
Awesome. And final question. From Georgia, do you think ice dance, and more specifically the free dance, has become simpler technically in recent years with certain rule changes? Would you like to see things like more in hold and more technical content required?
It's an interesting question. Who was that from?
Georgia.
Georgia. All these good questions. Funny you mentioned it, because I actually in prepping for some choreography for the Celebrity on Dancing on Ice, I'm always looking at videos, and I found myself looking at Best Jimenova and Buchan. I think it was from the 87 Worlds, and obviously ice dance then was incomparable. Like, just incomparable with the requirements of the sport now, but it was really entertaining. I think the new system has been good for ice dance. It makes it a bit more tangible. But I urge you all to go and check out the Best Human Over in Booking. I think 87 or 86 World's Free Dance, because that was cool. And maybe some more of that closed hold, less constrained stuff has a place. But I have to say, though, I do think that, particularly when you think of like Jock and Bates and what they're doing with the alien-inspired free dance, we're still seeing originality with the Mask of Zorro from Olivia and Adrienne. Like, we are still seeing people play with the rules to be creative, and props to the people that are doing that.
And to wrap up, because you do cover and watch a lot of skating and all the disciplines, what is your favorite program from each discipline this season? One.
Oh my God! That's just so nasty. Okay. Okay, Gabrielle and Guillaume rhythm dance. Yep. Okay. I don't like this game. No, nice. I like Tarasova and Morozov this year.
Yep.
I like their material this year. I always like that. They're clean, you know, they're so clean. Okay, late women's. Oof. Yeah. You just Tallyguard. Josephine Tallyguard.
Yeah.
That was good, because nobody's going to come back at me for that. And then the men's. What do you like? Who's your favorite?
Oh, the reverse card. There's going to the Olympics. Mark Hanretty's free.
Yeah. What a shame about.
I know he's not. Jason Brown as well. But yeah.
Cinnamon.
Yeah, it's like probably my favorite program of his, up there with like, I hold his river dance one close to me because it was the first skating program I watched.
Amazing. That you get goosebumpy. I can still watch that now and get woo.
Yeah, but his Cinnamon is amazing. Yeah, Kol Yadar really got into here yesterday.
And to be honest, that is like, I'm busy phobic about catching COVID because I'll be out dancing in ice, or like it'll affect me here, but that's nothing compared to a lifetime's pursuit of becoming an Olympian. Yeah. Oh my gosh, if I could make one prayer this month, it would be that all those Olympic athletes get to fulfill their dream of becoming Olympians. All the gods and deities, whoever you believe in, let's just make sure those athletes stay safe and COVID free.
Yeah, definitely. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having.
Yeah, and hope you have a good rest of the season on Dancing on Ice.
Thank you. Cheers.